Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and if you want to add ethanol to your build, you need a sensor to do it, and I'm going to show you how. All right, guys, so let's talk about this project a little bit and the reasons why you might want to do this on your tune. Now, if you want to add ethanol to your build, if you want to run more than just the little bit of corn syrup that we have in our normal gas, running all the way up to full E85, you're going to need a sensor built into your car, which it doesn't have by default. These are not inherently compatible for E85 builds. Now, this is something I definitely wanted to do, and I wanted to add this fantastic kit from Pro Tuning Freaks. Now, this is an easy install, and this is going to be the fuel hat install because they have two different versions. You have one you can install in your engine bay. You can have one you can install back on top of your fuel hat, which is underneath your rear seat. Now, I had this in a previous car. It was a vital part of my build to allow me to run anything from pump gas up to full E85 and the difference that can make in your horsepower. You know, running straight E85 can give you a tremendous amount of horsepower, startling amounts. And in my case, in my previous car, I had actually added almost 100 horsepower just by changing my fuel. So this can be a really vital part of a big horsepower build, depending on what you want to do with your car. Now, this is an easy install, so we're going to jump in. The very first thing we're going to do is take the back seat out. I'll show you how to do that. Let's get started. All right, guys, so taking your back seat out is easier than you realize here in my G87. This back seat bench is just held down by two big kind of posts on either side, so just grab and pull. I've already popped this side free, so go ahead and just lift it up and away. And go ahead and just pull this out of the car. Take it out and set it safely aside. All right, next, and I'm gonna move the camera so you can see a little bit better, we're gonna get to the fuel hat that's right over here. All right, so your fuel hat is right here covered underneath the carpet. So you're gonna kind of undo the carpet, little loop here to give yourself a little bit of extra room. And then you can peel the carpet back just like that. Okay, and we've got our fuel hat right here. Now, let me get this tucked back here a little bit. There's two like posts, basically plastic posts here on top. You can use your hands and just twist. And then the lid comes right off. Now, I'm gonna rearrange my camera so you have a little bit of better view here and you can see down inside because this is where our fuel hat's gonna go. But you can tell getting this cover off is really, really simple. Okay, let me change my camera angle and we're gonna show you how to plug this in. Okay, y'all, so let me show you this before we actually jump back into the trunk for a second. So this is a really straightforward and easy install. It's not hard at all, but there's a couple of things you want to do to make it easier and also avoid any potential danger. Now we're going to be unplugging both of these connections on the top of for the fuel pumps themselves. And here's your connector for your fuel. But keep in mind that it's under pressure right now. So if we were to pull this connection, we'd get fuel blowing all over the inside of the car, which would really be a drag, right? For all the obvious reasons. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to pull these connections, which is going to make the pump not have power. And then we're going to start the car to burn off any fuel and any fuel pressure that we've got in these lines. But before we do that, and it's actually highly recommended that you pull your battery first before you pull these connections. So let me show you the trunk really quick. This is in my G87, so my battery position might be a little bit different than your car, but the process is going to be essentially the same. We're going to jump back to the trunk, we're going to pull the negative post, and then we're going to pull both of these connections. But let's go back to the trunk. So I've pulled the back board. So here in my M2, the battery's in the center. Very frequently, the batteries are over on that side, depending on your model of BMW. Now, we're just going to pull the ground post. This is a 10 millimeter nut. You don't have to take the nut off entirely, just loosen it. Just go ahead and just loosen up that nut nicely. That'll loosen up the connection, and then you can just wiggle this off. Make sure to tuck this down in a safe spot where it's not going to potentially swing back up and touch and provide power. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump back in the back seat and pull off your two power connectors for your fuel pump. All right, so now that the battery's unplugged, we can take both these plugs off. This one has this little red latch. You're going to pry upwards first and then depress the tab that's now kind of unlocked. And then the plug will come up and off. Plug on this side is a simple, again, one of those simple locking tabs. You press down on it and then work the plug off. Okay, so we are unplug now from the fuel pumps. So go ahead and go back to your battery. Go ahead and put your ground post back on. And then we're going to walk through starting the car to burn off the fuel in the fuel lines. All right, so now that you got all of that taken care of and you got power back to your car, go ahead and start it. Now, it's going to start up, run, and then eventually fail as it runs out of fuel. You want to run it till it stops, and then go ahead and turn your car back off, turn your ignition off. Just like that. All right, so once you've started the car and you've drained the fuel out of this fuel line, I always keep some microfiber rags around because sometimes you'll get a little bit of fuel. I've already loosened the connection here because I wanted to show you what it looks like. It's almost impossible to show kind of in place. There's interlocking collars on both sides. Now, before we do this, make sure to pull the negative post off your battery, okay? You should only have a few drips of fuel in here. I have a tiny little bit that pooled out because mine is now loose. So when we look at this, you'll see there's basically stacking interlocking collars. The orange one and the white one, you have to press the orange one from this side, press the white one from that side, and then this will come up and off. Then you want to very carefully hang onto this hose very strongly, grab the fitting and turn it 90 degrees so it's parallel with your fuel hat. Okay, so go ahead and pull this off, and I'm going to soak up the little bit of gasoline that came out. I only got a few drops, and then I'm going to turn that fitting. Okay, so now that the fitting is turned, you can actually see those interlocking collars a little bit better. This is where you're going to want to take the new fitting. You can connect this to your OEM and make sure that it's all the way in and you've got good clicks. Just like that, and those collars are locked down. Okay, then you take the other end and you're going to fit it in. Let me tuck it in a little bit better here first. We're going to take this other fitting and connect it to the pump. And in both cases, so you can see in this case, the lower one is still loose. So as you do this and you lock all this in place, make sure both your fittings are completely solid. Last thing you want to do is, introduce a fuel leak in your car, right? But make sure that both of these fittings, now the new fitting here at the bottom has some little squeeze connectors you're going to want to squeeze on as you put it down. You should get a good solid click out of it. Make sure you got a click out of the OEM line, and then that's good to go. That also cuts down on any fuel smell that you might get. Okay, so go ahead and get this connected and in place. With everything connected, and again, double check all of your fittings. Now, what we want to do is make sure that we don't have any fuel leaks of any kind. So go ahead and use a rag. Make sure to clean up really thoroughly. You have no fuel left over whatsoever. And then plug your fuel pumps back in. You're going to want to plug your big master plug back in, plug the secondary plug back in, reconnect the battery post, and go ahead and start your car. Let it run for a minute or two. What I normally will do is I will start my ignition, so it kind of pressurizes the fuel system first. It avoids maybe a little bit of a rough start that you might get a little bit, but in general, it should fire right up. Once your car's running, go ahead and put it in neutral, put it in park if it's an auto. Come back and check all of your fittings. Make sure you don't have any leaks of any kind. I always triple check these before I start the car because last thing I want to do is have a high pressure leak, right? But make sure that all of this is cleaned up from any fuel and then check for any leaks. Once you're satisfied with that, we're going to plug in the electrical harness into this new sensor. All right, y'all, so once you get the car fired back up, this is where you go ahead and take your time. Don't rush this stage at all. I've got the car running with the new sensor in place, obviously with my fittings set here as well. And you want to take your time because if you have a leak and a slow leak, it may be something you don't see right away. And the last thing you want to do is have a fuel leak. So don't rush this stage. Go ahead and let the car run 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes. Whatever it takes just to make sure that you're comfortable. Check all of your fittings here on the new sensor. Make sure to check here where the hose meets the new sensor and where the hose from the sensor comes down to the fuel hat right here. Check everything. Let it sit for a while, let it run for a while. Make sure you don't have any fuel at all. Okay, so once you're done with that and you're comfortable that you don't have any leaks whatsoever, you can go ahead and we're gonna get the fuel hat back on, or we're gonna get the cover back on, but we're gonna run all the wiring extensions so we can control this new sensor.
All right, y'all, so once you are comfortable that you have no fuel leaks, and take your time here, like I mentioned, we're gonna need to start to run all of the electrical connections for this. So we've got this big boxy plug that plugs into the sensor here. So what you're gonna wanna do is on your fuel hat cover, go ahead and take this rubber grommet, peel it back enough to get the plug through, and then put a very small incision in the rubber itself for the wiring harness. And it just needs to be just big enough for the wiring harness. Go ahead and plug that in and go ahead and close this up. Now on the other end of the wiring harness is the control box, and let me bring this over for you here. So the control box itself, you can pretty much install anywhere. Most folks tuck it up behind the bolster here. There's plenty of space back behind the bolster. I'll show you what that looks like. But let's go ahead and get this plugged in first, get this all connected, and then we're gonna run the control box and the wiring harness down the passenger side door well. All right, so let me show you what I did, especially here on the G87. Now, you often can tuck the controller back here behind the bolster, or you can use, some adhesive, set it down here. In my case, I have a nice void space here behind this carpet piece. So I was able to get the controller and all of the extra wire, because there is quite a bit of extra, all tucked down into that space securely. Then I used a couple of zip ties here and here to secure it down, because what I don't want to do is have it be pulled on or anything when I put the seat base back in. Now, we have this long extension we're gonna run up the side, the passenger side, up to the body domain controller, or BDC. So let me show you pulling the door sill off. We're gonna run this cable down the door sill and up to the BDC. When you pull this door sill, because we want to run the cabling behind the carpet underneath this door sill, it hooks up on this lead edge. I usually pull this edge up first. Now these securing pins are usually left behind, and we'll take those out and put them back into the trim piece when we're done. But we pick it up from this end, pop it off these rivets all the way down to this end, and where it's got some flanges where it hooks up into the plastic piece here. So you actually really don't want to pull from this end. Okay, so go ahead and take your long cable, run it behind this trim piece, down the door sill, behind the carpet here, all the way up, and then we're also going to pull the trim piece here as well to get to the BDC that's back behind this piece of plastic. So let me show you what that looks like. All right, so here we are up in the passenger footwell. We've got the plastics off. I don't have the carpet pulled back yet. Your body domain controller, which is this big block back here with all of these plugs in it. Now I'm going to be pulling the plugs, I'm going to be walking through it, but I wanted to talk through this a little bit to get you set up for success before we get into this. Here's the jump cable that we're going to be installing. We're basically going to be pulling your plug 3 right here at the top out, pulling one of the blocks out that looks like this, and sliding this in place, and then plugging the existing block into this end. Now, all the specifics, which pin to which pin, I'll get to in just a moment. Now, with the G80s, and this is being a G87, if you notice, I've got one loose wire, right? So this is actually going to be going down here, and sorry, this is plug 7 up here, into plug 3 down here in the bottom row. We're going to be pulling out a single pin. We're going to be replacing it with a single pin and taking the existing wire and plugging it into the end right here. Now, that may sound all really complicated. It's really not. But I just want you to take your time very, very slowly and be careful with this. Now, the one other thing I wanted to call out is I absolutely have my battery, the battery negative post pulled right now. I do not recommend getting into the BDC or unplugging any of these things with your battery plugged in, okay? So if you reconnected your battery to test for leaks, which you should have just done, go back and pull your ground post before you do this. Okay, so let me rearrange a little bit. We're gonna pull this white shell off. We're gonna pull the carpet back a little bit so we can get in here a little bit closer. We're gonna be getting to plug 3, which is, in my case, this white one right here, counting from the engine side, 1, 2, 3, right here. Now, let me get closer and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so a couple of things. So you've got this first big plug right here that we're going to move to get out of the way to give us a little bit of extra space when we lift this white cover. And this white cover it doesn't matter as much for pin 7, which is up here, which we're going to get to in just a second. It will matter for pin 3 here, or block 3 here in a second. But just kind of trying to hold the carpet back so you can see what's going on here. This big plug, you pull down and it'll come off the clip right there. And then you can just kind of pull it out of the way. Now, the nice thing is here, pin 7, or block 7 right here, actually is this big wiring harness right here with this plastic rivet. So I just pulled the plastic rivet up and away to give myself a little bit of extra room. Now, these blocks are those typical BMW horse collar, and it's going to be really hard to see right now, but there's horse collar up here on top that you're going to want to depress the collar and walk it back, which will walk the plug out. Now, I'm pretty sure my hand's going to be in the way when I get up here, but I will show you what this looks like. Now, because on top of the plug, there's a little tab that you press down on, and then the horse collar will come back. It's really hard to show at this angle, and I know my hand's in the way, but let me pull this plug and I'll show you what it looks like. It'll make a lot more sense when you can see it, because you have to depress the little tab and then walk the horse collar back, and then the plug will come out. And I'll show you how we're going to replace it with this. Okay, so as we pull this plug out, I can show you more clearly. Now, in this case, there's two different styles of this plug. So here's that horse collar that I was talking about, right? There's really two different styles. There's one with a tab right in the middle that you depress and pull the collar back, or apparently they've changed it with this new model with a squeeze on either side, and then the collar will come back, and then this plug will come out. Okay, so you can see that the plug is out nice and safely there. Okay, so now to get the actual interior plug off, this white outer housing is just a shell. So what you want to do is you can take a pick tool, get up underneath this edge, because there's a little locking tab right there. You're going to get underneath this edge, and then you can back the plug itself out. Now, you may end up having to do both sides. I find that it's actually easier if I do both sides, because then the whole thing will come out. Because what we're going to do, as you can see, is that comes out just like that. We're going to be replacing it one for one. So we're going to pull this off and replace it with this one. Okay, so just slide these apart, and we're going to make sure to match pins as well here in just a second. Okay, so now with the little gray side back in, go ahead and insert the new wiring harness. There really is only one way that this can go in when you really look at it, right? Because there's a little locking tab. So if you actually tried to put it in backwards, it's not going to fit, right? It can only go in one way. Now, these wires are straight, so you're gonna have to bend them a little bit to get it to go into that harness, because they haven't been leaned over inside this shell yet. As you can see, just slowly work it in. Go ahead and keep that pink wire free. Make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, because we're gonna need that in just a second, okay? But get that and walk it into place. Make sure that you got a good connection there. That's pretty tight, as you can tell from all the extra wires kind of there out of the top, but that's there into place. Now, what you're gonna wanna do is take the jump, which is where the other end of this, right? We've still got our fuchsia or pink wires here still free, so I'm just gonna move them so they're in a good accessible place here in a second. This jumps into the original plug here. Now, you wanna make sure that you have this matched up correctly. So when you look at this and you look at pin 1 on this harness, you can find pin 1 should be on this side, because if you look at this side, we're looking at 19 through 36 in very, 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 very small print, okay? So if we flip this around and then we look at our original plug here, you can see, okay, so what's our wiring setup here? So pin 19 through 36. So we're gonna wanna take it and plug this in like that. So we should have a good solid connection there, and that's jumped into place. Once that's set, go ahead and take this plug, push it back up into place. The plug will go into the socket, and then you walk the collar back down, and the collar will lock it back into place. Make sure that this is plugged in well, okay? But double check all of these before you put them in. Make sure that you have this in the correct orientation as well, and you should be good to go. Now, what we're gonna do, and I'm gonna move my camera a little bit, we're gonna be pulling plug 3 down here in the bottom, and a single pin here out of this block 3 down here. All right, so once you have this successfully connected, and again, check your pin out to make sure that it's right. I compared several times just to make sure that my pin out is correct. I've also, in looking at the original pin out, we've got kind of yellow with a white tracer, yellow with a black tracer at one end that matches the orientation of the yellow and green here on the jump cable. At the far end, we've got a red with green, so you can kind of see the orientation that this goes in. So go ahead and settle that in nicely. Now my pink jump wire that's going to go down to pin 1 here in a second is nice and loose where I can get to it. Be careful not to pull on that. Go ahead and take the original plug, now that it has the jump in it. Go ahead and take that and put it back up into place up here. So just put it up into the plug and then walk the collar back into place until you get a good solid click like that. Hopefully you guys heard the click. So here's kind of our wiring harness that's up here. You could always put a little bit of electrical tape kind of on either side of this plug to keep it together. I'm not going to worry about it. They're really long pins. I don't see that being a problem once it's tucked up here nicely. Now, here, when we look at this, you've got this white plastic brace kind of around the outside, which is why I pulled this plug right here, so I can gap this up and away. Because what we're looking at as we count from the back, now you're not going to be able to see it just because of camera angle, but way back here in the back is plug 1, which is white, plug 2, which is white, plug 3 right here with the green collar on it right here in this block, in this lower row, okay? So the innermost black one, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to squeeze on the top of the collar to walk that horse collar back. And yeah, it's pretty tight spaces in here. So just go ahead and work that back just like that. Let me get my hand out of the way. Okay, so now that's off, and you can take the plug and walk it here to the outside. So here is our plug, and we're going to pull out pin 1. So you're gonna want to take your tool out again, and let me find you pin 1, and I'll show you which one that is. Okay, so now that this block 3 is out, and this is where sometimes you can't count on colors, right? So I've seen this plug, which is blue right now. I've also seen it as the plastic is green. I'm not sure why BMW changes it, but as you look at it, it should be, as you pull the plug out, it should be this, left-hand side block right here. This one on the outside. So again, you fish it out a little bit, you press out the outer side of the hull, and then the plug itself will come out. And then as you look at it, you're looking for this green pin 1. Now, if you've seen, for example, my remote start videos where we change a lot of these pins, I really say be careful. So we're actually going to be changing a pin here. You want to be very, very careful as you do this. This is not hard, but if you strip one of these pins, it's really a hassle to get fixed, to put it mildly. Okay, so you're going to want to take a pick tool. You can take a 45-degree or a right angle or 90-degree pick tool, and there's the little sleeve, the little metal connector here, and there's a little locking plate in it. So what you want to do is depin this. What I usually will do is I'll put a little bit of back pressure on the wire itself, and you can see it. You can see the plug. You can see that connector inside of the block move. Then I'll take my pick tool and very gently depress on the locking tab and pull backwards. Now, it's easy to pull too hard. And I have stripped these off before, and it's not hard or expensive to buy a new one of these connectors. It's just a pain. So you very carefully depress it while you're applying a little bit of back pressure, and then it'll start to come out. Now, I'm glad I did this so I can show you. There's actually 2 rows. The little locking tab is right here in the front, and then there's a second row right here. And sometimes it can get hung up on the second row as well. So I'm glad it actually did that so I can show you. So again, just very carefully kind of into the smaller gap, just reach in, applying a little bit of back pressure on the wire, just reach in, depress the little locking tab. Just be gentle and patient at this point. In this case, my pick tool might be just a smidge too big. There it is. Nope, got it. Okay, so it's out, just like that. Okay, now, we've got a little bit of this plastic in the way, the rest of the wiring harness, so let me come up here and grab our pink or red or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take the female end from the new wiring harness and slide it, locking tab up, into place, just like that. And you should hear a little pop. It should snap right back into place. Then you can take the plug itself, walk it back into the main block. Now, be careful with your wire length and all of this. As you can see, as we're starting to have, as all of this kind of wraps up in the cover and everything else. But the one thing we don't want to forget as we do this, so here's that original wire we pulled out, the green one, this female end, right? We've got the male end over here. So you're going to want to take this and plug it into here, the green one that you just pulled out of this block. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk the block itself back into place to give myself a little bit more room and maneuverability to get the rest of it. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is once I plug our male jump here, our male jumper cable into the green original, I'm also going to just to be safe, I'm going to put a little bit of electrical tape. One, to keep the connection together for sure. It should be okay, but I'm just going to be extra safe. And two, not to have something with electrical current going through it that could touch something. I just don't want it to do that. Okay, so we got really tight space to work with. As you can tell, it's not hard. It's just a matter of just kind of getting it all to fit in together, right? It's kind of playing automotive Tetris. Okay, so let me get this plug block back in. I'll show you what this looks like when it's pinned in together, and then we're going to put the car back together. All right, so holding the cover back so you can see here. So we've got our new jump harness going up here in the block 7 all the way up here at the top. It's going to be tucked up and nice out of the way here in a second. You can see that pin 1 coming down into block 3 right here. You can see that red or pink or fuchsia wire, whatever you want to call it. And then you can see the male side plugged in right here. And like I said, those are bare contacts, and I wanted to show you what it looked like before I put electrical tape over it. But I am going to put a little bit of tape over that just to make sure that they don't touch anything and they're not in the way. Okay, but all of that should make sense. So once you get that done, go ahead and snap this cover back into place. There's 2 little fingers right here. If you pulled this big wire off to get it up and out of the way, so go ahead and put it back on the cover, and then we can start to put the plastics back on and we can test. So the cover's back on. We've got good clean wiring routing everywhere. It's not going to pull on anything or be in the way. Now I did want to point out really quick, right here and right here, these are those famous BMW plastic rivets for that plastic shell that goes over the top here. When I pulled the shell off, 2 of them stayed behind. So you can use something like a trim tool to just pull those out like that. Okay, as I drop it. So I'm going to pull out both of those, put them back onto your plastic, and you can fit the plastics back up here into the space and get that all locked down. You can put your door sill back on as well. If you did end up with some of these white rivets left behind, I usually just use a pair of pliers to pull them out. And that one was loose enough, I just pulled it out by hand, which was kind of nice. They don't normally come out by hand. And put those back on your plastics for your door sill. Okay, so go ahead and get the kick panel on here, get your door sill on here. You can put your back seat in if you haven't done that already. Make sure to flip the carpet back down. When the back seat base goes in, you tip it in kind of at a 45-degree angle, pull the seat belts up through the holes, and then snap it down. And that will be back into place. Also, once you have all of this buttoned up, go ahead and put the ground post back on your battery, and let's test it.
All right, so go ahead and clean up and put your tools away. Now, as far as testing this system, what you want to do is make sure that everything is reconnected, your battery's reconnected, and everything put back together. Go ahead and fire your car up. And then how you actually activate this system is by using your cruise control rocker, usually on the left side of your steering wheel, rock it down into the first position, and you'll see your RPM gauge be taken over by the sensor, and you'll see it spike. So 4,000 RPM is going to be 40% or E40 in that case, and so on as you go through all of the different blends of ethanol. This can be a huge part of your build. It certainly was in my previous car, in my M2C, and it's going to definitely be part of this build as well. I can't show you right now on this car because my ECU is not unlocked yet. That's definitely coming as part of my big power build, but it's not ready to go just yet. I wanted to get this installed so it's going to be ready. I really want to thank Pro Tuning Freaks for making an absolutely fantastic product. This works really, really well, and I highly recommend it. And as you can tell, the install is not all that hard. Please make sure to click like and subscribe. It honestly makes a huge difference to my channel, and I would really, really appreciate it, as I have a ton of content coming, not only for the M2, but many other models, including new car reviews. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on my next project.